Right, right. Yeah. No, this does go back to, it goes back to Newton and Darwin and other scientists too, that where this, if we go back in the last couple hundred years, where the body and spirit were split, and they said when we talked to spirit or spiritual terms, now that's the church, you know, and then we talked about the body and its physical health. Well, now that's a Western doctor. You know, we just kind of split these things. Until along came people like Einstein, who's probably the most revered scientist that's ever walked the planet. And boy, was he explicit on this. But it wasn't just Einstein. Um, there actually are other Nobel Prize for physics leaders. Erwin Schrödinger said that there's only a oneness in the universe. Uh, Other scientists as well, Max Planck. You know, there. I won't try and list them all. On the Humanities Team website, we actually there's an initiative we created called Changing Humanity's Future. It gets into all of this. And if you go to the Changing Humanity's Future page, there's a hyperlink that says sources of confirmations of a conscious reality. When you click on that link, you'll see all these quotes from scientists, these uh, revered, well-known scientists that made it their life work, that are sharing that, you know, and again, this some of this goes back into BCE, Plato and Hippocrates, that uh, we just this when a couple hundred years ago when we split off spirit and spiritual and the science of the body and mind, we did a great disservice. Because, as you mentioned, if you were to sit down with many scientists today or many leaders of religion, they would absolutely agree with what you shared, Jason, that these are separate things. There's no putting them together. But um, the science of this being put together is pretty undisputable. Even the Nobel Prize for Physics in last year, 2023, in October of last year, was for three researchers who researched something called entanglement. Now, entanglement, if you look up the definition of it, it means that you can have things on completely different sides of the universe, hundreds of thousands of light years apart, that are deeply affecting each other. There's no physical connection at all. That's Nobel Prize for Physics just last year. So, and that's one of the features of this deeply interconnected reality, this oneness, which is today's universe. What we're seeing is a lag time effect of uh, where science is actually demonstrating and proving things, but there's a substantial lag time before the mainstream of the world sort of catches up, comes into the awareness, and changes the way that it lives and its habits. We compare today's world to Galileo's world. So Galileo was the scientist there in Italy in the early 1600s. He was the In the early 1600s, he was kind of the father figure of science, of physics, of astronomy, and he created a telescope based on it. Actually, was the Dutch first created the telescope. He created his own telescope based on the Dutch, and was observing the cosmos. At that time in the early 1600s, you might recall that they believed that the Earth was the center of the universe, right? And the sun and all of the stars were actually uh, in the out in the exterior from the center, which was the Earth. Now Galileo observed that with his research, whoa, this is not true. The Earth is actually not the center of the universe, that we are in a solar system revolving around the sun, warmed by the light of the sun, and not at the center of the universe at all. Uh, and this was very dangerous to do what he did in the early 1600s because there was the Spanish Inquisition. We probably all remember that from growing up, the Roman Inquisition, right? What these inquisitions were doing is where there was heresy, you know, where you stood up with your research and went against the prevailing conventions, it was very dangerous back then. He was put under house arrest and he was asked to recant immediately this research. Uh, And he did. He recanted to save his life, and therefore he was not killed. But he was kept under house arrest to the end of his life because of that research. Now, even though he recanted, there were other scientists then that observed the same thing, that said, wait a minute, with telescopes, the Earth is not the center of the universe. And so this one man actually changed the whole world back then in the early 1600s. Prevailing opinion, the mainstream, wanted to push against it, didn't want to look at it, didn't want to, in fact, wanted to kill the person that brought this research forward. Back through time, there are other examples like this where a science was brought forward and mainstream wanted to reject it. It's change. Change feels too substantial. Mainstream wants to reject it. Likewise now, these articles are everywhere, and the science is everywhere, even Nobel Prize for Physics. And yet, as you mentioned, you sit many scientists down alongside many leaders of religion, and they would say these are completely separate and there's no intersection. So it takes a while. There's a lag time before people adopt this latest research. It's important. The reason we bring up the Galileo story, Jason, is because we're saying this is a Galileo moment now. We're living in a Galileo moment right now. How? How so? Well, there was a false reality that one man exposed. The Earth is not the center of the universe. Likewise, today, just to put some different words around this, in today's world, we grow up, from the time we wake up on the pillow to it's the separated self is kind of the center of our universe. Me, my smaller self. What do I want to do? What do I want to focus on? What shall my career be? It's our separated self. Even though science is now sharing, there's no such, it's a fiction. Just like Einstein said, it's a fiction. It's the greatest illusion in the world. The separated self isn't even true. It's not real. So we're saying we all need to be like Galileo. There's no one person that will do today what Galileo did in the early 1600s, that kind of put it on his back and changed the whole world. Today, we all need to do our own homework, our own research, and see, oh my God, the separated self thing is a fiction, just like Einstein said. It's not even real. I've been living into a fiction. My ladder's been leaning against the wrong wall. And the beautiful thing is as we understand that fiction and understand this universal consciousness of which we are a part, and we start living into that, and that makes us become more into service. It's our bigger self, where we see ourselves in the earth and each other. That's actually where I found it during my own journey. That's where I found this really fulfilling life that we call conscious living.